and welcome to lesson 14 of Learn to Play Hymns. This week we will be continuing on with the concepts that we have learned in C major and apply them into the key of G major. We have been looking at two things in C major to do with improvisation. We've looked at using the C7 chord, and we've also looked at using some melodic improvisation. Now the melodic improvisation applies to any key that you are in, the same principles apply. But we've also looked at the C7 chord. So we're just going to look at how we construct a G7 chord, since now we're in the key of G major. To construct a C7 chord, we know it's comprised of the notes C, E and G, and then we add the seventh note of C major, which is B. Then we lower that note by a semitone and make it a B flat. So a C7 has C, E, G and B flat. That's how we construct a C7 chord. So in G major, really we do exactly the same thing. The G major chord is comprised of G, B and D, and we're simply going to add on the seventh note. Now in G major, this is an F sharp. So if we lower it by a semitone, the F sharp moves to an F natural. So just remember, you're lowering that seventh note by a semitone. So if it's a sharp, it becomes a natural. If it's a natural, it becomes a flat. Now that you know how to construct a G7 chord, let's think about how we would use it. This week we'll be looking at the hymn Jesus Loves Even Me, which is number 720 in the Living Hymns hymn book, or alternatively you can use the link in the description below. So your homework for this week will be to continue practicing your technical work, which is your scales, so your C major scale, your F major scale and your G major scale, and they're all one octave hands together. You'll also practice playing the hymn, and you'll look at putting in a melodic improvisation and also the G7 chord, and we'll look at that separately on the piano. And thirdly, you'll do your theory analysis. So mark down all of the G major chords, the C major chords and any F major chords if there are any, which is very unlikely in the key of G major. And if you can identify any C7 chords if they are there, or any G7 chords if they are in the piece, then go ahead and do that. And again, we're writing the name of the chord, G, F, C, above the chord, and underneath the chord we're putting if it's a 1 chord, a 4 chord or a 5 chord. So in G major, our 1 chord is going to be a G, obviously. Our 4 chord is going to be a C major chord, and our 5 chord is going to be a D major chord. Now, we haven't learnt the D major chord yet. It's D, F and A. If you want to give yourself a bit of a challenge and you're feeling up to it, see if you can identify that chord, but otherwise just look for our traditional C, G and F chords, that's fine. So let's go to the piano and let's look at some melodic improvisation, and let's see if we can find a spot to insert the G7 chord. Okay, so let's have a look at the hymn Jesus Loves Even Me. And first of all, we'll have a look at inserting the G7 chord. So to insert a G7 chord, we're looking for a G chord that's followed by a C chord. And if we have a look at the chorus, the first bar of the chorus is a G chord, and it's immediately followed by a C chord. So we can put our G7 chord at the tail end of this first bar. So we're going to play our G chord, and then on glad, on that second main beat, we're going to simply add an F natural into the chord, and then we are on C, and then the second line repeats. We'll look at putting in some melodic improvisation into the piece, and we'll look for where there's a longer note and see if we can put in a few notes around that. So let's start with the melody from the beginning, and really you can do anything, but for example you could do something like this. Here is to play the melody. I am so glad thou art Father in heaven. And then I just played a D up, back to the B, and then it's a step to the A, which is the next melody note. So just a couple of little notes and they land you back to next to the next melody note. And then here you can just do a little run up to the next melody note, which is a D. So if we start from B below D, we can do a little run up of B and C, and that takes up to the D. And so here you can do a nice little melodic scale that runs up from the G, which is the last note of the verse, to the D, which is the first note of the chorus. So you can just run up. So I'll just play the hymn through now, and I'll put in those couple of ideas, but then it's over to you to come up with your own ideas as well. Have fun with that piece, and I'll see you next week.